And because of this digital warfare, because of social media addictions that we all have, we are being manipulated. Our minds are being manipulated. Our human vulnerabilities to feel validated, to feel heard, to feel seen are being manipulated with every single scroll and new reel that shows up. So because of social media and all the information that we're getting, conflicting information from many different sources, we can't tell what's true anymore or not. So some people have panicked at that thought. They're like, well, I have to believe in something. So I'm going to stick with the thing that makes me most comfortable, or I'm going to stick with the information that already confirms what I had previously thought. No, I'm not crazy because this website says, so and so is standing this way with this hand here, reaching for this gun there. So that this means my point is right here and your point is wrong over there. You're the crazy one. I'm the right one. It's getting maddening, isn't it? How we're all getting this extreme addiction to being right. So when we try to live in a cohesive democracy together, the whole point of having a social, you know, uh, the point of social fabrics, we need is to have a shared reality. We have to have some semblance of a shared collective reality for us to not fall apart and kill each other and rip each other's throats off, okay? We need to have some idea of what we all agree and believe in. We kind of had that, right? This is I think this is what I'm theorizing. We had something that was kind of like a shared reality. When we talk about the good old days, like when everybody was kind of the same, right? Like cookie cutter, right? We had the 50s, the good old 50s, right? Mom stayed home and cooked and cleaned, and, dad went to work, and the kids, went to school. And, most families all believed in the same one God. And, the majority of what we saw on TV and the representation we always saw on TV was the white nuclear family. Everyone had light skin that we saw. This was like a shared, cohesive reality that everybody felt comfortable in. They believed in the comfort of life was this particular picture and box that I just presented, that white Christian nuclear family. And that was like a shared reality where people kind of felt like safe. This is how the world is supposed to be. This is my normal, so it should be your normal. But when somebody comes along and says, wait a second, I'm not white like you are. I want to be represented on TV too. For some people, that causes a glitch, like, oh my God, how dare you? Like, it feels threatening, right? And then you have other things that started happening in the 60s, the so-called counterculture. That's why it was called counterculture, because it was against the culture, the cohesive shared reality that we all had at that time in the 50s. People of color were starting to become more prominent in music, the arts, being represented more in media, and the civil rights movement, and uh, gay and lesbian, LGBTQ people were starting to come out of the closet more and more. Women were saying, no more. I cannot stay home anymore. I'm going crazy. I can't keep taking uppers during the day and then downers to sleep at night. Like, I'm just like, women were saying, I'm going nuts. I can't do this anymore. So then you saw the women's liberation movement, and all these changes made people who were used to the former box feel panicked. And so we've been seeing those slow changes happening slowly, 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 until finally we kind of felt like, okay, well, we kind of have a decent reality going on here. Like, let's say the 80s and 90s, mostly the 90s. A lot of people say we peaked as a civilization in the 90s, and we were kind of going okay up until the 90s. Our shared reality had changed quite a bit from the 50s to the 90s, but we didn't see any sort of hints of a civil war happening. We didn't really have the internet back then either. We did, but we didn't have social media the way we have it now. So the shared reality was that, okay, I can handle seeing, a gay couple here and there on TV. I can handle, people were like not freaking out and saying it was woke, to see black musicians and, other people of color who were just starting to get famous, and nobody really batted an eye or protested. Things kind of seemed like we were going in a nice direction of just, you know, progressing as a society with a few little bumps along the way. Then 9/11 happened. everything changed after that. For anybody who was born after 9/11, it's kind of hard to describe how we feel as a collective society, but you kind of feel that shift. I was 22 when 9/11 happened. So it feels like there was a shift in society after 9/11 happened. We became more paranoid. We felt like our entire lives had been like, for the people who are alive today, at least, who hadn't been alive during World War One or World War Two or Pearl Harbor. For us, for our generation, for this modern generation in our lifetime, 9/11 kind of felt like before 9/11 and then after 9/11. So after 9/11 is when ICE was created in 2003. So then just very shortly after that, we had the explosion of all social media starting to happen. YouTube, Facebook, then all the others, Instagram, whatever. So we have been bombarded with information for the last 20 years. Let's say it's 2026 now. So since about 2006, I think is when Facebook and YouTube really started to take off. We are being bombarded with so much information that we are having so much trouble deciding what's real and what's not anymore. Technology is advancing faster than our human brains can handle. Our brains are not equipped. We're not evolving as fast as technology is evolving. Our brains are still wired for certain basic survival instincts like food, water, shelter, safety, self-esteem, a sense of belonging. But this is where social media kind of starts, making you feel and think, oh wait, my sense of safety and my sense of belonging is being threatened right now. There are other groups out there who are threatening me, and people feel threatened by immigrants. This is where I'm going with this right here. We, and by we I mean anybody who's watching this who has less than $1 billion in their bank account. We, us, we are feeling threatened because we have very few resources when you really come to think about it. Okay? Human beings, we want to survive. We are wired for survival. What did you do today? Me, I woke up, I went and shoveled my driveway all by myself, like 2 feet of snow. I'll use feet for my American audience. And I kind of go back and forth as a Canadian, I think in imperial and sometimes metric, but 2 feet of snow. Went to work, came back home. I was too tired on my way back home to make dinner. So I grabbed some takeout food for me and my family to eat. I had other errands to run. I'm exhausted right now. It's 9:30 at night and, I did a few chores around the house. I still have more to do and I got to go back to the grind again all day tomorrow. I have a 3-bedroom townhouse. I am not rich by any means. I'm not starving, but I am closer to being, obviously I'm not starving, but that's besides the point. Take away whatever judgments you want to make about me. She's stupid. She's a lefty. She's fat. She's chubby. She's a woman, a feminist, whatever. Just take all that out of your head right now. Please take away stereotypes. Just listen to what I'm saying. I'm trying to survive every day. Me and my family are trying to survive every day. You and your family are trying to survive every day. And you are being told that your survival is being threatened by somebody whose skin is darker than yours. Somebody who doesn't belong in your country. Okay? You have been programmed to believe that the immigrant who is, working at the local landscaping company, the immigrant who is serving your coffee, the immigrant who, she's working at a coffee shop or, she's working as an orderly at the hospital. You're being led to believe that that person is your enemy and that they must be eradicated in order for you to survive. And that's just not true. That's just not true. They have just as much social capital as you and I do. They have just as much, monetary capital as you and I do. Most of us do not have much more than the other, but we're being told to hate each other and go at each other's throats. We have got to stop making each other the enemy. And social media is literally one of the biggest driving factors behind why we are all hating each other so much. I wanted to give you this quick video. Sorry, not quick, but I mean, it's not long enough to be a lecture or anything. I am kind of talking a bit too long, but if you could just bear with me for a bit. We are being programmed by social media algorithms and reels to stay on as long as possible, and the algorithms are feeding us negative information more than it's feeding us positive information. Okay? Our brains are naturally wired to pay more attention to negativity than they are to pay attention to positivity. So when you see negative reels and negative information, your brain attunes to that and you end up staying on the internet longer and longer than you should. And then, of course, there's all the brain chemicals that are involved with feeling, your sense of safety or your sense of threat or whatever. And then there's the brain chemicals involved when you feel rewarded, obviously dopamine. So you'll get a reward when you're on social media and you blast out this inflammatory opinion, and then boom, 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 boom. You have a bunch of people who think just like you, giving you a ton of likes and saying, yes, you're right. Those immigrants are evil, la, 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 la. So you're getting flooded and rewarded for giving out that negative opinion. People are agreeing with you, and then you're sitting there feeling, right, yes, I am validated, I am good, and these other people are the good people on my side, and we are going to eradicate these evil immigrants together because they are the ones who are the real cause of our troubles. No, they're not. Immigrants are not your enemy. And even if there is the occasional immigrant who does commit a crime, which there are undocumented people committing crimes. There's no question about that. You have to stop for a second and think logically, okay? What you're doing when you sit there and take one example of one bad thing and you color it your whole perspective with that one bad thing, that's like the drop of ink in the water cognitive distortion. So it's like one drop of ink just literally color that whole formerly clear glass of water. It's all dark now with ink because you've painted all immigrants as being bad and the enemy because, this sporadic case here and that sporadic case there. We can sit there and extrapolate facts and figures all day long to fit each of our different sides and narratives. We can do that. But what is it going to help you in the end? Is the eradication of that immigrant going to make you personally richer or safer? I can tell you from my side, from facts that I've extrapolated, that I don't feel afraid of immigrants. I've looked at facts that make me feel that I'm more in danger of being harmed by a straight white man. And this is not to say that you as a straight white man watching this are evil at your core. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying statistically, I can actually find and pick arguments that can support my side and say, I'm actually more likely to be hurt by a white man, not, Joe Blow from whatever country who just happened to overextend his stay here because there was that one story about that one guy who did this in that state or that city that one time in 2003. Statistically, I am more in danger from a straight white man. I'm sorry to say this, but I am. But I'm not sitting here letting that cloud my thinking to the point where I'm like, all right, let's round up a whole militia and let's get rid of all these, straight white men. I'm not doing that because I know cognitively that is not correct. That's unfair because there are millions of straight white Christian men who will not hurt me walking down the street. They just won't do it. I know this logically. Do not let fear and cognitive distortions shape your brain into scapegoating the wrong enemy. You're not my enemy. I'm not your enemy. The immigrant on the street is not your enemy. I'm sorry to say this. I don't know how this is going to come across or if this video will be taken down for saying this. But billionaires are our enemy. The richest people in the world, like the top 5 richest men in the world, have half the global wealth. Why aren't you going after them? Why aren't you angry at them? Why do you think that they're your friend? Why do you think that they are helping you and I? You think that you still believe in trickle-down economics? We could go into a big, huge, long debate about that too, okay? The immigrant is not your enemy. Please stop. What we're doing is called lateral violence. We're taking out our frustrations that are coming from the top down, and then we're taking it out against the people next to us. Our frustration is being channeled to the people beside us. We're not each other's enemy. All of you and I and every humdrum person, everyday Joe, average Jane, going to work every day, We are not each other's enemies, and we have got to stop getting at each other's throats like this. Social media, we're literally in digital warfare right now, and social media is convincing the majority of us to hate each other when we are not each other's enemies, regardless of political stripe, political affiliation, regardless of your gender, your sex, your gender identity, your race, your immigration status. There's a reason those are enshrined in our constitutions, or in Canada in our human rights code, as protected grounds, because those are not what we should be hating people based on. Okay? People who are deliberately trying to harm and control us are up at the very, very top rungs of society, and we're down here at the bottom. We have barely anything to our names. We have, savings accounts here and there. We've got like what, 1 or 2 cars in the driveway. What? Our entire motivations from morning till night are about survival. So we're acting in tribal ways right now. We're acting, and I don't mean tribal in a negative, pejorative connotation, like in terms of any sort of cultural connotation. I'm using the word tribal in a psychological term, like people want to stick with their tribe to protect itself from what they feel is like an enemy. The other group is an enemy. Okay, so that's why people tend to stick together in echo chambers, in places where people all think the same and are cohesively having a shared reality together, because then you feel like, okay, this group, this sense of belonging, we will protect ourselves from them. How do we sit there and reach across the aisle and see the other person from that other group is pretty much the exact same as us? They want to survive every single day too. They want to just be able to feed themselves and feed their families every day too, and have a roof over their head, and have, a little bit of joy and entertainment for the short time they're here on earth. How do we get out of this extreme polarization that we're in right now? The social media is exploiting us to be more and more polarized, to hate each other more. Social media is exploiting us to be more and more outraged with each other. It's exploiting us to not believe a thing we see anymore, or not believe a word we hear anymore, because it doesn't align with what we believe is true. Our sense of truth and reality has gone out the window. Our shared reality has gone out the window, and it kind of feels like we're facing an existential threat right now. Like, by existential threat, I literally mean we feel like our existence is threatened. This is what the end game is, what we feel, why we're acting in such an emotional way right now, is because we're fearing like extinction. We're fearing, our group is going to become the out group and the extinct group, and somebody else just wants to get rid of us so that only their group can stay in this little shared territory space that we have here. Again, humans are territorial as well, as we know, right? So, yeah. The sad part about this, what I'm trying to get at, this territorialism and this existential threat that we're feeling, is that us humans, us everyday Jane Doe and Joe Blow, whatever, we are polarized between us and them, left and right, to the point where we have people talking about civil war. So now we're starting to see posts and reels talking about civil war. And then what happens with civil war? It could actually blow up and become a global war, right? Which with today's technology would just end all of us, right? So this is what I'm saying, like that's at the extreme end of what could go wrong with polarization, is boom, nuclear war, and we're all finished, okay? That's the end extreme that we can go to, the end goal, unless we have a cooler head, unless we have cooler heads prevailing, unless we have one cool head or two cool heads or 5 cool heads or 10 of our so-called leaders encouraging us to have cooler heads. And we don't have that right now, unfortunately. I'm sorry to say it. Call me all the names you want. Call me a stupid, fat libtard or whatever you want. But Trump, he is not a cooler head right now. He's inflaming. He's fanning. He's fanning these flames. He's fanning them. He's telling you guys to be afraid of people like me. He's telling all of us to be afraid of each other. He's not in danger. He's protected up the wazoo. He can sit there and fan these flames and it's not going to affect him. Cooler heads have to prevail. We need a leader. We need somebody who is going to sit there and calm everybody down and unify the people a bit more. Whether you're American or Canadian or, European or, from India or China or whoever, we have like a few top leaders in the world who are literally have all of our lives in their hands. They can make or break how much food we have to eat every day for ourselves, for our children, for our families. They can make or break our bank accounts. They can make or break our entire lives. We don't have power. We're at the bottom of the power rung, us everyday folks, and we outnumber all of those so-called 5, 10, 15, 20 people at the very top making all these decisions for us or influencing these decisions in the world. That's not us. That's not you. That's not me. We can't influence each other to be calm. Some of us, a lot of us, have made a little bit of a following on social media where we fan the flames of anger and we do encourage people to be rude and hateful jerks. You got Andrew Tate encouraging men to be extremely hateful towards women. But this is what I'm trying to say. If you pride yourself on being a so-called independent free thinker, stop letting people, whether me or Tate or Trump or, whoever, Kim Jong-un, whoever, stop letting these people tell you who to hate. Sit there and think for a second. What does every human being want? They want love. They want validation. They want survival. They want a roof over their head. They want to survive from day to day to day. But most of us are going about all of this the entirely wrong way because somebody influential told you who your enemy was. If you really pride yourself on being an independent thinker, step away from all of those sites, all of those influencers, all the politicians who have been feeding you with negative bullshit. Stop listening to them for a second. Step away from your phones, step away from your computers and laptops, step away from these influencer circles, just for a day or two. Maybe just go to Google instead. Watch some really interesting documentaries on Netflix. Do some essential reading of revered books in our history that taught us a lot about, the human psyche. Look up psychology books. Go to your local library. Read about human psychology, human motivations. Get away from these negative sources for a while. You need a reset. We need a reset in our brains, in our psychology, and how we're... Take a deep breath. We need a reset in our charged up emotions right now in who we hate and who we love and what we think is right and good. Because my idea of right and good in my mind, I am just as convinced of my idea of right and good as you are of your idea of right and good. You know what I mean? So when you have two fervently believing people who fervently believes each side is righter than the other, this is how you get civil war, okay? Because you want to quash your enemy who doesn't think as rightly as you do. And we have to stop thinking like that, okay? I will tell you right now, I have trouble believing 100% in a Jesus Christ-centered Christianity religion. Am I saying it doesn't exist? I don't know. I don't have enough hubris or proof to say it does or doesn't exist yet, okay? I can't pick a hardline position in either way, yes or no, in that sense yet. But I will never, ever quash or stop anybody's desire to go to a church and fervently believe in Christ. Go right ahead. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. And stop letting people tell you that you are being persecuted for being a Christian. Just because somebody doesn't believe as fervently as you do in Christ does not mean they're trying to stop you from being a Christian or going to church. Go. Go, 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 go. I went to a church service a couple months ago on a Friday night because I'm still open-minded. I'm still trying to think of different ways of looking at the world and, different things to believe in. There's lots of different ways to look at the world. And then in terms of like, the whole LGBTQ issue, you have people fervently believing that it's the most evil and devilish thing that ever existed for somebody to dare to love somebody of the same sex. But you're being fed these ideas that these people who love others of the same sex are somehow dangerous. I could spend years comforting you and reassuring you they are not dangerous people. But at this point, I don't know how many of you would believe me, because you have been so programmed to think that LGBTQ people are the literal devil in human form. You think that they're demonic. You think that they're out to hurt your children. It's like, no, they're not. They're not trying to do that to our children. On the other hand, like I said before, I can cherry pick and extrapolate data too to support a different position where, there have been plenty of church pastors who literally have violated children's innocence. And you have to also remember the majority of younger people, minors who have been victims of molestation, are usually victimized by somebody within the family. These are things we all have to think about before we always try to find scapegoats and say that group is evil, that group is the cause of this, that group is the cause of that. Please stop doing that. Please start researching more and thinking more outside the box of what you've been fed to believe about who is the actual evil enemy, okay? I am not an enemy of anybody just because I think differently than you. I am literally a quiet, unassuming, sitting in my quiet little suburban home, not doing anything to hurt a single soul. I went to work today. I pay taxes. I think the worst thing I've done is gotten parking tickets. Don't have a criminal charge to my name. But by the accounts of what you're following on social media, I'm supposed to be the actual demonic enemy of so-called right-wing Christians in North America today. I can't imagine why you would believe that regular everyday people that you see walking around the street are your enemy. I'm only your enemy right now because you're watching me behind a screen on social media. Me walking down the street, standing in line with you for a coffee, you have no idea what my political beliefs are. And you say hi to me in the coffee line. I say, after you, sir. Or you say, go ahead, ma'am. And I'm like, thank you, sir. You open the door for me. We're trying to still be civil to each other out there, right? You don't know what my political beliefs are, but the internet and social media feeds that you're, constantly consuming every day are telling you that I'm your enemy. Really? I'm your enemy? This unassuming, middle-aged old hag like me who, goes to work every day and raises a disabled adult son and, stops off for coffee every so often and, likes to go out to, skating rink events with her friends and likes to run ultra marathons. I'm your enemy? Really? Let's stop looking at each other that way so much. I really wish that we had some kind of influential political leaders who would speak more in unification terms, instead of in egoistic, ethnocentric, our way is the best way and your way is the wrong way. Politics stokes our fears. That's how they get elected. They stoke our fears and say, if you elect me, I will make said fear go away. But it never actually happens. Once that person gets elected, has your fear ever gone away? No. I've been through dozens of elections in my lifetime. Both sides have been in there in my country, in Canada. 3 sides, actually. We've had NDP, Liberal, Conservative. Nothing drastic has changed in my lifetime from the time I started voting at age 18 till the age of 46, whether it was a Conservative government, a Liberal government, NDP. Nothing literally drastically has changed in my life. My bank account hasn't changed drastically. The only way that will change drastically is because of me. I'm responsible for making my bank account increase as an able-bodied person. Anyway, that's a whole other can of worms right there. So, and then we can get into the whole, politics of what happened with the pandemic too. And people are like, well, Donna, the Liberals were empowered in the pandemic and they made us stay home and they were a tyrannical government. Like literally, I could sit there and I could talk to you for days and days and days and days and days and weeks and months and years. Like the pandemic was literally one of the best times of my life. I did not feel, oppressed or tyrannized. Just made up that word there. I did not feel terrorized at all during the pandemic. So it just goes to show you everything in life is about perspective. How do you perceive what is happening? How do you perceive the information? How do you ingest the information that you're being given? How do you extrapolate from the information that you're being given? You can take it, you can interpret it, and then regurgitate it, and then snowball it into something absolutely fantastically paranoid and hateful and evil and psychotically unnerving if you want to. You could drive yourself crazy by looking at things through such distorted lenses. I know I've ranted for like about a half an hour now, but I'm just hoping to get people start to have like a little bit of food for thought. Like just start maybe like thinking a little bit outside of the box that you've been used to. Think a little bit more, just a step. Just take a baby step. I don't know. I've taken baby steps outside of like leftist spaces, right? And I still believe in my values. Like I value certain things. I have values like empathy, empathy for the poor, empathy for marginalized groups, et cetera, et cetera. Those are core things that my personality style, my type, my personality temperament that I was born with values things like that. So I find leftist policies align more with my inborn personality temperament, which is, empathy. Think where another person is coming from. Put yourself in another person's shoes. So what I did was I said to myself, Donna, you value empathy. Okay, try to put yourself in the shoes of somebody from an extreme right-wing MAGA type space. So they, in their mind and in their space, they think their way of viewing the world and that their values and that their worldview, they think they are as right can be based on their personal values and their personality that they were born with, that they grew up with. Maybe they grew up with, and this is what I've seen from the research, maybe they grew up with the idea that, because a lot of conservative studies on conservatism or right-wing thinking, they place high values on tradition and authority. And like law and order, rule of law and all this kind of stuff. I don't really care much about tradition. I don't care. Like I'm all about, okay, let's change. Let's try something new. Let's, oh, okay. Like you want to, oh, look at your hair. Oh, that's a nice color. I like some kooky little, rainbow colors you got in your hair out there. It's a little outside of the traditional look, but if it makes that person happy and they feel kind of, a dopamine rush from looking in the mirror and seeing all these kooky colors in their hair, what's the big deal? Why am I going to let that threaten me that somebody else likes a different hairstyle than me? It just, tradition and fitting into neat little boxes has never appealed to me. Even though I look like the plainest, most boring, white middle-aged suburban Christian on the planet, it's just, that's not how I think. I think that people should be free to express themselves however they want without being labeled the enemy or a terrorist or something or a lunatic. Like, have you ever actually sat down and made friends with anybody and had coffee and talked, regularly? Like, let's say had a weekly coffee with somebody with blue hair. Did you ever sit down and meet their friends and family if they have blue hair and a septum piercing? And did you meet their dog? Did you meet their cat? Did you, spend a week with them and see, what makes them tick on a daily basis and that they're an actual human being like you are too? Doesn't mean that they're some kind of psychotic, lunatic, devil, demon worshiper just because they don't look like you do. We were taught so many things in kindergarten. Everything we needed to learn. We learned that we needed to know. We were taught in kindergarten, right? Don't judge a book by its cover. Treat others as we want to be treated. But here we are, millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of grown adults not treating each other the way we learned in kindergarten. So we're literally acting worse than kindergartners right now because of how social media is influencing us to hate each other. The algorithms are influencing us every day to hate each other more and more and to polarize us more and more. I don't know the exact statistics off the top of my head, but I saw a graph on that documentary that I told you I was watching, The Social Dilemma, and the graph actually showed, how like the split between like Democrat or Republican and then independent, like it was showing this graph and how it's like, ooh, like this split became like huge, like on two gigantic extremes, and exploded into like this more polarity more and more, starting around the time when social media came on the scene, like in the mid 2000s and up until now 2026, where it's like the split is so freaking extreme, the polarization is so extreme. And I know correlation doesn't equal causation, but it just seems like there's a huge correlation between social media and how polarized we are as a people in North America. And believe it or not, we have extreme polarization happening here in Canada too. And everything that happens in the States pretty much rubs off on us here in Canada too. Like, I know we're two totally different countries, but a lot of the culture and a lot of the thinking is very similar here in Canada as well, where we have a lot of people who want to stick to the traditional white heterosexual Christian traditional norm, and they absolutely despise the idea of change or progression or anything outside of that norm, and they see it as a threat to like an existential threat to their well-being and their safety and their survival. And it's just the two sides, and I'm just going to use the two sides for example right now of political affiliations. The two sides are just refusing to listen to each other right now. And that is so disheartening. There's so much hatred and distrust between those two. Each side is feeling so silenced by the other side, and it feels enraging, right? You feel a sense of rage when you feel like you've been silenced, don't you? And I get it. Nobody wants to feel silenced. I feel enraged when somebody tries to invalidate and silence me or tell me that I'm some kind of lunatic who doesn't know what she's talking about. It's like, I hear you. I hear some ideas being said by your side that I think are absolutely batshit unhinged. Just the same way that you think people on this side of the aisle say that you think that we say batshit crazy unhinged things too. Trust me, we believe the same thing about you. So what does that say? Who's better? Who's really, really objectively better? Your side or my side? Or is it just bias that makes us each think that we're better than the other? Think about this deeply, people. It's literally coming to a matter of life or death right now. Like civil war, existential threat. That's where we're headed. We need to have a shared understanding of what's true. We need to have a shared understanding of reality. We need to have an ability to look at a video and say, yeah, okay, I saw the rectangle go into that rectangle space. Yeah, you agree that's a rectangle? Without someone coming along and saying, no, that's not a rectangle, that's a square. And it went into a circle. And I'm just like, no, I literally saw a rectangle fit into a, you know how you have those little toys where the shapes have to fit into the ball? I literally saw a rectangle go into a rectangle space. And then you have someone come along and telling me, Donna, you're crazy, and gaslighting me and saying, you're crazy, Donna. That was a square that was trying to go into a circle. And I'm like, no, it's not. I literally just saw a square go into a square. Why are you telling me something that's completely false? And it makes us feel like we're in the twilight zone sometimes because none of us are having a shared reality together anymore. And when somebody is telling you that your reality is so off, you start to feel so goddamn enraged that you think to yourself, I have got to prove that what I saw was real and that what you are telling me is wrong. And we are going at each other's throats by not having a shared reality anymore. And we need to have some kind of a loosely shared reality in order to have a cohesive society that doesn't go at each other's throats and start a civil war. We need to have some kind of shared reality. But what does that look like? We can't agree on what that looks like because we have, 400 or 500 million people here in North America who all have different ideas of what a shared reality should look like. And it's the job of a leader, the leader of the free world, to help us all, to lead us all and give us a sense of confidence in what a shared reality should look like, if we're going to sit there with the same system that we have now. If you don't want to look to a leader anymore, then we're going to have to look to each other and decide amongst each other, what do we all agree is a shared reality anymore? What are we all going to agree on? Okay? Like, we need to get back to the fundamentals and the basics. Do we have to go back to, does everybody have to take philosophy courses now so that we can actually start, retraining our brains how to think again and decide what's real and what's not anymore? It seems like we're all going to have to go in that space now, into that direction. Maybe try going to a philosophy class this week. Search them out in your local area. Help yourself learn how to think a little more outside of your box, outside of your comfort space, outside of your zone, because we are really entering into that quote from 1984 from George Orwell about ignoring the evidence of our eyes and our ears, and that way people will not know what to believe anymore, and all you will literally believe is what that authoritarian person is telling you. Everything else is rejected. None of that other noise is, you're not listening to any of it. Your brain is literally just focused one track, zoom on that one person at the very top. He's telling you this is true, this circle right here, and that's all you're focused on. His truth is your truth, and that's all you're focusing on right now at this point in time. If you are deep, deep, deep in a fervent devotion to Trump right now. I'm sorry. I was going to use the word cult, and that feels extremely insulting to people who are fervently devoted to Trump. They'll say, I'm not in a cult, and they'll resist it with all their might, heart, and soul. But if I could just kindly introduce the idea to you that you might be a little bit in a cult, a brainwashed cult. You might be. Just entertain that idea for a slight millisecond. A slight millisecond. Entertain the idea that you might have been fleeced, just for 2 seconds. I'm not saying convince yourself right now that you're in a cult, but just try to take one tiny baby step and think to yourself, who am I listening to for my sense of truth? Am I listening to myself? Am I listening to my mom and dad, my brothers and sisters, my family, the books that I grew up loving, the TV shows I grew up loving? Who am I taking my sense of reality from right now? And if it's only from one singular person or one singular party, you have to ask yourself, why are you putting all your faith into that one singular person, that one singular party, to the negating everything you had ever learned before in your life? You stripped all that away from your identity before, and now all you think is what that one person tells you to think. Just something to think about, okay? I don't know. All I know is that I question a lot of things. I have values that make me more align with policies that will help people who are downtrodden and marginalized, just because I have a lot of empathy. I've been through hell and back in my life. I don't want anyone else to go through the same hell that I've been through. So that's why I kind of feel like, let's help out this poor soul over here. I'm not gonna hate somebody for being homeless. I'm not gonna hate somebody for being a drug addict. I know where they're coming from. They're traumatized, and I know we've all been through trauma, but you don't know until you've been in that person's shoes how bad their trauma was compared to your trauma, okay? And you shouldn't even compare trauma anyway. That doesn't help anything, okay? The point is to have compassion and empathy for your fellow brother, sister, non-binary, because there are people who, they grew up literally having, feeling both gender identities, and that's okay. That's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world if somebody feels both, okay? Or if they feel neither. Just let people be, okay? They're not out to hurt you because they're not exactly like you. However somebody feels, as long as they're not hurting you, let them feel that way. I don't care if somebody wants to identify as non-binary or a different gender than they were assigned at birth, or a different sex that they were born. Whatever. I don't care. Okay? If it makes you happy and it's not hurting anybody, it shouldn't bother you. Okay? I don't understand why it bothers you. So I've tried to do research into that as well. I've tried to do research into why the human brain feels so much disgust or rage or anger at somebody expressing themselves outside of societal norms. And that's the next thing I'm going to research tonight. Actually, I'm dying to know why people feel like what parts of the brain, neuroscience wise, are activated. I want to find out what brain chemicals are involved in people feeling disgust towards people who fall outside the so-called ethnocentric, dominant Christian white heterosexual norm that people value so much in North American society. What is the brain chemistry? What's the brain circuitry involved in making people hate and feel disgust for LGBTQ people so much? I want to find out what the brain circuitry is involved in that, because it's baffling to me. I don't understand the hatred. I don't feel it. I don't feel hatred to people who are different than me. I'm straight and white. That's who I am. But I'm not Christian. I'm just kind of like agnostic. And I have gone to Christian churches, and I was a born-again Christian 20 years ago. But I kind of don't feel like that fervent, like, oh, it's Christian or nothing else. I don't feel that anymore. But at the same time, I don't expect anybody in the world to be like me. I don't care if you're like me. We have to give people the freedom to be different than us. I love meeting different people and hearing from different people and hearing from their different experiences. The world, as we were always told, would be so boring if we were all the same. I love meeting people from different cultures, trying their foods, hearing about, like what they, their customs, their traditions, meeting people of all different walks of life is a fascinating way to live. It's fun. It's exciting. It opens your mind. It gives you fascinating things to think about. It gives you fascinating things to talk about. Good Lord, like I hate sameness. I hate routine sameness. I don't know. Like it's just that's probably a part of my personality that makes me open to new experiences and new people, is that I don't feel like I have to have the same freaking meals of hamburger, hot dog, pizza, whatever every single day. Instead, I'm out here and I'll go try escargot one day, and then I'll try like a buffalo burger the next day, and then I'll try like, I don't know, butter chicken. Well, that's not very exotic, but you know what I mean? Like different foods from different cultures. And yeah, I do love my food. But yeah, it's fun to try different foods and talk to different people from different cultures. And that's why it doesn't scare me to talk to different people who are not straight white Christians or don't fit into the same demographic as I do. I can go out there on the street and have a fabulous 1-hour discussion with a homeless person on the street who is addicted to fentanyl, and I will have just as good of a time chit-chatting with them as I would, going to a black tie function. And I'll sit there and I'll chat with like politicians and millionaires, and I'll be able to have conversations with them at the same time too. But at the end of the day, I kind of feel more comfortable talking to the person who's addicted to fentanyl, because they're at their most authentic self at that point. And authenticity is so freaking important to hang out with people and be with people who are extremely authentic, instead of all the masks we're wearing and the fakeness that we're surrounded by. All these veneers that we've developed and masks we've developed to try to fit in with so-called social and cultural norms. I think it's really fascinating when somebody, and it's courageous when somebody has the audacity to actually step outside of a cultural norm and be totally different than what everybody expects of people, which is why I think it's really cool if somebody has like, rainbow colored hair or blue hair and tattoos everywhere, and they just decided to say, F it. You don't like me the way I am? That's your problem. And they are probably out there living a happier, more authentic life than, millions of people who feel like they have to fit into one box and look just like their neighbor and act just like their neighbor. And I would never want to live like that. it's so sad to think that people expect each other to all think the exact same way and look the same way and talk the same way. We have to stop this kind of culture that we've developed because of social media. We've developed a push where people are like, let's go back, let's go back, let's go back to those good old days where we were all the same. We all looked the same. We all talked the same. We all acted the same. People were miserable back then. We're still pretty miserable now, but I think we're also a bit more free now. And with freedom can come a little bit more happiness. We're more free now to be like, okay, I'm a little bit different and I'm going to break out of this box and be a little different now. And that's a really amazing thing for anybody to feel like they can express their differences or their authenticity and not feel like they will be persecuted for it. And that's the great thing about what democracy is supposed to be about, right? It's supposed to be about your ability to be different, to think differently, to feel differently, and express those differences without being ostracized or penalized for it. You know what I mean? The problem is social media is teaching you and trying to convince you, and politicians are convincing you that you are being persecuted, but you're not. You're not. There's nobody that I know in any circle that I've ever been a part of who has said we have to abolish churches. There's nobody I know that says that. They don't want churches to be abolished. They don't want that. I don't want that. Have your church. I love driving down my street corners and seeing, oh, there's a church right there. Oh, there's a Buddhist temple right there. Oh, there's a mosque over there. Oh, there's a, Jehovah's Witness over there. I like seeing the fact that there are different types of institutions and religious organizations from all different religions within one city. I think that's great. It's fascinating. I don't think any of them should shut down at all. Think what you want, believe what you want. That's supposed to be the great thing about our democracy. And it feels like it's being eroded right now, and we're all being told that we have to be straight white Christians again. And that was a so-called time when we had a so-called shared reality that was supposed to be the greatest time on earth that's making America great again. But it's not, because back then there were people who had really rough times. That was before the Civil Rights Act. Was it really great back then for Black people before the Civil Rights Movement? I don't think America was great back then for them. So progress is good in a lot of ways, and you have to keep an open mind about what progress really means. Progress means letting people who kind of think differently and feel differently than you do exercise their ways of being, their ways of knowing, their ways of living in a free way. They're not trying to tread on your way of living just by being able to live in their way of knowing and living their reality. They're not trying to ruin your reality by existing in their reality. That's what different religions are all about. They have different realities, different schools of thought. So what I'm trying to say is live and let live. Bottom line, long story short, I always grew up with a philosophy of live and let live, right? I live my life, let you live your life. It's just really hard to do that right now with social media and politicians telling us all to be at each other's throats, thinking that our way is the only way. I'm getting so sick and tired of this. I don't know what the solution is. How do we get everybody to kind of calm down and stop letting people dictate to us who's right and who's wrong? Who reaches across the aisle? Who's going to be the first person to reach across the aisle? Who's going to be the unifying voice? Doesn't have to be one person. It could be a whole group of people. Who and how can we unify so that we don't implode as a society? And I'm going to say, again, North America, because I kind of feel like Canada and the States are connected. We're basically the same culture. Our border, I don't know. We have a few significant differences in our culture for sure, but I'm literally only 60 kilometers away from the border of Ontario in the States right now. So I kind of feel like we should be neighbors, okay? And it's really disheartening to see that your leader, the so-called leader of the free world, has tried to ruin our neighborly relationship. To what end? For what achievements? To achieve what? Money, power, and control. And the rest of us, we're all just pawns in that game. I'm a pawn. You're a pawn. I don't want to be a pawn. I don't want to be a pawn of somebody who's going to tell me that I have to take his side, or otherwise I'm considered an enemy of the state. That's not fair. And you shouldn't be a pawn either. You're not going to get rewarded in the end by following this guy. It's not like he's going to say, oh, thank you, Joe Blow from 123 Main Street, Anytown, USA, for writing all those positive things about me on Facebook. Now I'll give you, $50 million from my little Trump bank account. He's not going to reward you that way. He's not your personal friend. He's not going to help you. I'm sorry, I'm saying something very facetious and stupid, but, it does sound very stupid. But I pulled out that absurd argument. Reducto ad absurdum is what it's called in Latin. In legal lawyer terms, they'll know what I'm talking about when I said that. Trump's not going to sit there and be like, here you go, Joe Blow from 123 Main Street in Anytown, USA. Thank you for putting all those posts on Facebook, supporting me and my regime. And here's $50 million for you and your posterity forever and ever to enjoy a beautiful, prosperous life from now on, after we win Greenland and take Canada and make them the 51st state. None of us are going to win in the end, okay? We're all still going to be, little cogs in the machine, okay? Us, the everyday little people. Now I'm going to sound like a communist or using these words. The proletariat, us everyday working cogs in the machine, we are not going to benefit from Trump's ambitions. Just something to think about. I haven't really done a deep dive into how we would be damaged. I don't know exactly how we would be destroyed. I just know that I do not want to give up the things that I love as a Canadian. The culture that I love as a Canadian, I don't want to give that up for Trump. That's why I don't want to be the 51st state. I still want to be able to go to work every day, have entertainment on weekends, do something meaningful with my vocation every day, raise my kids happily, make them happy, take them to happy places, and still be able to have a roof over my head, enjoy my pets, and find a little bit of happiness for the short time that we're here on Earth. Those are my goals. How are we all going to bridge this chasm? I've talked for close to an hour. I congratulate anybody who sat there and listened to me ramble this whole time. I can't believe you did that if you did, so thank you. But I don't know what the answers are. I don't have a 100% conclusion, right answer, solution. I'm not HITLER with a final solution, because I don't have that kind of hubris. Like, I'm just one person, right? The fact that any one person thinks they have a solution or one solution for how society should live is a scary person. It takes a lot of voices to figure out how we should live. So that's why everybody in a democracy should have a say. And that's why we elect people, because those elected representatives are supposed to bring our voices to that one house and then say, this is what my constituents think. Here, I'm relaying their thoughts to you. Can you please make decisions based on what these people back home think? Representative democracy is what we have here in Canada. So basically, I made this video. I'm going to end in about 30 seconds. I made this video to get people to think maybe a little bit more clearly, a little bit more broadly about, start being philosophical, get a pen and notebook out, maybe write down some thoughts and ideas of what you think you can do to help bridge the chasm in our polarized society right now in North America, and how people can learn to get along better, and how we can have some kind of a relatively shared reality again that we can all agree on, so that we don't enter into a civil war. All right. Thank you so much for listening so far, or at all. My name's Donna Durick. I appreciate you listening. Please follow me for more videos.